We're delighted that this episode is sponsored by our good friends at DGR Slatter Decorators in Jersey.
Like us, they're a family that cares, and family is the cornerstone of everything that they do.
With 47 years of experience spanning 3 generations, they've built a legacy of excellence and expertise.
So whether you're looking to add a splash of colour to your living room, revamp your bedroom with some intricate wallpaper, or maybe you want a complete home makeover, dgrslatter.com are there to make your vision a reality.
A lot of people think that anxiety and happiness are completely incompatible, but is that true? Can you be anxious but also still be happy?
I think the problem is that a lot of people really fear anxiety. Like they don't know, they don't understand it. And we all, I think, have an element of fear and discomfort around something that we don't understand. But the truth is that we actually couldn't live without anxiety, could we?
It's interesting because we see a lot of people fear it. Constantly in the emails that we receive in our office, we get statements like, I'm sick to death of battling anxiety, fighting with anxiety, suffering with anxiety. And those are the descriptions that you get around anxiety. And as though it's something that, like, it's a separate entity that's attacking somebody. That's what it feels like. But ultimately, we have anxiety for a reason.
Yeah, and I think that, and that's a great point, Nick, in that, we shouldn't hate our anxiety. We shouldn't battle it. We should try and understand it. A great analogy of how I like to see anxiety is that, it's like having a fire alarm in your home. You need it to keep you safe. You need anxiety to keep you safe. You have, or a smoke alarm, you might, if there's a real fire, your smoke alarm is what's going to save your life. If there's a real danger, your anxiety is what's going to save your life. Now, the problem, I guess, arises is when you burn toast, because you burn toast and the smoke alarm goes off, and that's when it feels uncomfortable. And that's the same in life, is that when we have anxiety and there is no danger that we can see, it kind of feels like, why is my smoke alarm going off when there is no fire? And I think that's the problem, isn't it?
I think it's that fear of the unknown that makes it so much worse as well. Like, imagine if you say you burnt toast, someone else comes in, they see the smoke, they see the fire alarm going up, you think it's a big thing. And then once you understand the anxiety and you realise it's just the toast, it makes it a hell of a lot easier to deal with on the whole. I think that lack of understanding and also the frustration that you get at anxiety when you're experiencing it. So if so many people tell us they're just generally anxious, and we can't be just generally anxious. We get triggered off by something. It might just be that we don't understand our triggers, or that we've got quite a lot of them because we've built them up over the years. But I think when you do have that lack of understanding, like Hunter's saying, and so we feel anxious, but we don't know why we're anxious. What then happens is you get frustrated, and that actually elevates anxiety, because we're the ones setting off the anxiety response. So frustration elevates anxiety. That, like Dad said, battling, that feeling of I'm angry at it, I don't understand why I'm anxious. The helplessness.
That elevates it. All those feelings, helplessness, the anger, the frustration, they all elevate your anxiety because you're feeling more negative emotions as a result of not understanding it.
But understanding that actually you're the one, we get triggered by the environment, but you're the one who actually set the triggers up in the first place, and you're the one that's in control. So all that's happened is that you've linked your anxiety response to something that isn't dangerous, but back at some point in your life, you perceived it as though it was.
And I think that a great tool to start to sort of dig into your life and understand what those triggers might be is literally writing a timeline of life events, literally document them from 0 to whatever age you are now. We tell, people that we see in our clinic to compartmentalize that, start age 0 to 8, 0 to 10, look at the things that happen, because, you could have had a situation occur that was in childhood, and because it's remained unresolved, you're still being triggered. A great example of that is phobias. Most phobias are created between the ages of, say, 3 and sort of 15, and you might have had an experience where your brother chases you with a spider, for example, as a kid. And because you're only a child, in that moment, instead of realizing, well, what's going on here? It's my brother that's creating this fear in me. You see the spider, so you blame the spider, create a phobia, and then going on forward in your life as an adult, you carry on fearing those spiders, still creating that anxiety about spiders, until you go and see a therapist, or you start to unravel and resolve that situation from childhood.
And I think another thing as well is that a lot of people feel so overwhelmed with anxiety because they think, well, I don't know where this all came from. I'm just anxious about so many things. And you mentioned like a phobia there, which a lot of people might feel, well, that's so much more simple than me. Take a spider phobia, for example. If you've got a phobia of spiders, something's happened to you in childhood, or you've witnessed a parent reacting to a spider, is really common with spider phobias. And then as a result of that, you've now got an issue with spiders. And that might seem quite straightforward, but I think a lot of people think, yes, but I've got health anxiety, I've got OCD, I've got, a phobia of being ill and phobia of being sick and all these things. And there's just so much. And actually, often it all comes from one thing that's just spread into... added lots of different things into it. So it still works in the same way is what I'm trying to say. If people feel so overwhelmed because theirs is so much more complicated than that, and that's why they just feel they can't see out of it, understanding that still it comes from the same sort of place, but it might just be that you've added more and more into it over time.
So let's just simplify this for everyone, and going back to what your mum said was that in relation to the smoke alarm, that ultimately there are two main types of anxiety, and that's anxiety in context, as in with the smoke alarm, your house is on fire, right?
Can you give another example of that in a more
everyday
life term where people would go, oh yeah, I get that?
Well, in context where you're, so for example, let's say that your mum went shopping and she said, I'm going to be home for 6, and I'm just like busy doing stuff, and I look at the time and it's 7:00, and I'm like, where is she?
Yeah.
Why is she not home? Right? I will feel a level of anxiety because I think it's an hour after she said she'd be home and she's not home. Is she okay? Right. So I'll have a normal level of anxiety. So then I will think, well, where's she? I'll ring her up. Phone goes straight to answer phone. Right. So that anxiety will increase.
Yeah.
And then it might be half an hour later she walks through the door and says, you won't believe what's happened to me. But as soon as she tells me that, said, oh, I had a flat tire or whatever, the anxiety should disappear, right? And that's fine. That's in context, and we get that all the time.
I also just throw in there losing your purse, Eva Speakman. Just all the time. She loses everything.
Phone and purse.
Or that phone anxiety where you've been in a restaurant or you've been somewhere and you go, oh, and you pass in every pocket.
But again, it makes sense because your part in pockets you don't even have.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
You're trying to find new pockets.
But it makes sense though, because if you lose your phone, that's nowadays everything's
on there.
Or your purse, it's like, well, what if I've got to cancel my cards and find it and all that. So again, anxiety.
But as soon as you're patting everywhere, and then you do one part and you go, oh, it's there. The anxiety disappears.
Although I will say, when mum now says I've lost, I don't even worry because I know she'll find. I'm waiting for the moment where she goes, found it. I just listen, wait.
Yeah, I don't even.
There we go.
Anymore.
She's got it now. Yeah.
So, but as soon as you find it, the anxiety disappears.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's in context, completely normal. Now, when it's out of context, that's when, which is also normal, but if something, when you've linked the anxiety to something that you perceived dangerous in the past that isn't anymore.
Yeah.
Can I do a round the table question on everybody's things that have made them anxious or sort of anxieties that we've had personally? Because I think a lot of people look at us as a family and think because of our
what
work,
we do,
because of our therapy,
because
that we're not. And the truth is that, we are no different. Nobody, absolutely, nobody is immune to getting anxious or having anxiety or anxiety disorders.
And our brains all work the same.
Our brains all work the same.
So let's not lose sight of that. Our brains are all the same.
Yeah.
So I think that, listen, I have a catalogue genuinely of different anxieties that I've struggled with over the years, from health anxiety, death, fear of death and death anxiety, fear of judgment, phobias. I've had claustrophobia, I've had acrophobia, which is fear of heights, I've had spider phobia. But what I'm going to just mention
now...
now...
encyclopedia.
I was going to say, this is like a top trumps card that she's playing hers out there.
Yeah.
Like, all these that I've got.
She'll trump us all.
I will definitely
in more
trump
than
you
one
all.
way.
Definitely trump you all.
This is the second time
Can I
your
just
gas has
say,
come up on this
I
podcast.
like fibrous vegetables, and my Polish roots mean that cabbage appears very highly.
We didn't even.
No
No
one
one
asked.
knew what we were
No one
talking
asked.
about. Then.
I'm just
No one
putting it
asked.
out there. I'm just putting it out there. Anyway,
Right, yeah.
so for me, I think one that was a really big thing that I think a lot of people struggle with, that is an anxiety called glossophobia, which is a fear of public speaking. And the cause of that was twofold. So I think the origin of it was reading out in class. So, you're reading out in class when you're at school, and it comes to you, you're in English class, that, you've got to read your paragraph, you say a word, everybody, say it wrong, everybody starts to laugh. Boom, I've created an anxiety around public speaking. And because in that moment, I didn't like that feeling. So my brain, it was protecting me from that now. And so now if I publicly speak, I feel anxious. That was where I was at. So I had a real fear of public speaking, and that really hindered me. And it wasn't just public speaking, but it was also having to speak in authority, for example, with somebody who I would have on a pedestal, school teachers, as in with you two. When when you were kids, if I had to go and speak to a teacher and it was something that was a little bit that I was unhappy about, I really struggled, but obviously I did it. So mine was glossophobia, fear of public speaking. Speaking out, I would get anxious. So part of it was because of what happened in class, and the other part was because I'd been bullied so badly by so many different people that I feared that I was going to get judged and ridiculed, belittled. And so it was just easier not to have to speak. But if I did, I was filled with anxiety. What's yours, Nick?
Mine was the same, really, because I had glossophobia, and but similar circumstances. And I think, dependent what you read on the stats on glossophobia, it is considered the biggest phobia in the world. And I know there was a study done in America. Can't remember the.
Are you pinching Science Corner?
Yeah, I can't remember the exact stats, but they surveyed a few thousand people and asked them if they had a fear of death or public speaking, and actually more people fear public speaking, which their conclusion was that people would rather die than public speak.
Wow.
I think that was the joke.
Wow.
Really. But anyway, so the reason why I got that, and for most people, I was off school ill for a few weeks, and then I went into school, and on that day in English class we had to do a presentation, and everyone had prepared these presentations. They'd had a few weeks to do it, and I was like, I've not been here, I don't know anything about it. And his Speakman, it don't matter, you could do one as well. And I had to try and think of something whilst everyone else was doing their presentations, and I couldn't think of anything. The only thing I could think of were cats. I always go to cats as my default, and it was like, well, you can do yours last. And I did my presentation about cats, and it was pretty poor, to be honest, because I'd not prepared anything, and everyone laughed at me. So in that moment, I create the situation of if I speak to a group of people, I'm going to get laughed at, I'm going to feel humiliated, and it's not nice. So moving forward, my brain goes, well, okay, I'm not going to put you in that situation again because I know how bad it made you feel. So then when I was in situations where I remember not long after that, well, I wasn't long after that, but I think I was 19, I got asked to be best man at a wedding and asked to do a speech, and I dreaded it so much because, again, it was like doing the cat presentation again. I just thought I was going to get laughed at, even though the people that were interested to what I was going to say. It wasn't totally different set of circumstances, but I struggled with that as well.
So that was our out of context anxiety.
Yes.
And I think we both had out of context anxiety because we both had health anxiety. And again, that was learned behaviour because we both had mums who were on very high alert for ill health, and quite often health anxiety is something that we copy because if your grown up is telling you that you could be illness is something to fear, then of course you will too. So what about you, Hunter? Out of context anxieties.
I think that the public speaking, I think, again for me, but not even public speaking, even just amongst my friends in a group of people, one-on-one I'd be fine, but in a group I'd feel very anxious, and when it would come around to even import or speaking, I would just start feeling very anxious. And it was only recently I realised that. So for a long time it just felt like I'm getting anxious. I don't know why. I don't like being around people.
And that's such a good example of how we can sort of why it feels so overwhelming when you don't understand. And going back to what we were saying before about can you be happy and have anxiety, I think that, you know, if you understand your anxiety and you know where it comes from, it can give you so much relief, because you can kind of go, like you in that situation, right, I get it, it's because I'm in this situation, especially if you understand where it comes from, that in the past I've been in, you know, a situation where I was in a group and I got laughed at or whatever it might be. It takes that power away. Then if you feel so frustrated, you understand you must have been in that
And
situation,
it can go the other way
why
as
do
well,
I feel so anxious?
if you don't understand where it came from, like, you know, and you suddenly feel anxious and you don't know where it's come from, then you can start blaming other things,
Well,
and then it starts growing and getting bigger.
Well, that is what happened, because then I started blaming myself. I was getting angry at myself because it would affect the, like, I felt like I didn't know what to say, and I'd get kind of panicky about that, so I feel like
Which
I'm
makes
feeling
anxiety
anxious.
worse now.
Exactly. And then I felt like I couldn't be in groups, and I felt like I would get angry at myself, because I'm like, I want to speak to my friends. I want to be able to input something and like get close to these people, because I don't know all of them that well at the time. If I'm in a group of new people, but wouldn't feel like I could or knew what to say. And then I would blame myself and get angry, and then obviously that would affect my self-esteem.
What's really
and
interesting,
stuff.
and I've not asked you yet, Liv, what your out of context anxiety that you're going to share, but funnily, how we were saying that public speaking is number one, and already, you know, we're a family of 4, and 3 of us have identified that same thing. So, Liv, what's your out of context?
Yeah, and I would relate to that. I don't know whether I would have ever said that I had glossophobia, you know, public speaking anxiety, but I definitely would say that I would feel anxious speaking in front of a group, but necessarily wouldn't have labeled it that way. But hearing what you guys are saying, I'm like, actually, yeah, I would have felt, maybe not in a group of people like that, but if I would have been asked to stand in front of the class and give a presentation, I would have been shaken. And it's funny, isn't it, how we don't, just listening to you guys, I would not have labelled that as me having anxiety, but actually, now I think about it, I suppose a lot of people feel uncomfortable in that situation, and we do feel anxiety in that situation, probably again from judgment, because I went to an all-girls school, there's a lot of judgment, you know, between girls, and I felt that judgment, so mine was probably a fear of judgment in terms of that. But as well as, you know, public speaking, I had out of context anxiety in regards roller coasters was a big one for me. I was terrified of roller coasters as a kid, and just the worst thing, that you would never get me on a roller coaster, worst thing in the world.
Where did that out of context anxiety come from?
I actually don't remember, you know.
You know what I think I do, actually?
Go on, hit me.
I think it was, if you remember when you were on a school trip when you were little.
That you're right. Yeah, totally forgot.
Even I remembered that.
Isn't it funny how now I've dealt with it?
Yep, you've just
I've
gone
totally on that about it.
Yeah,
now you've said it, because I've told you about it
exactly.
ages ago when it was bothering me. But now that it's just so irrelevant in my life,
an adrenaline
totally
junkie.
Forgot about it. No, but it's true though. I've totally forgotten about it until you just said that now. But interesting.
We had to dig that out because we were asking you, well, why do you think? And you were like, I don't know. And we eventually got it out and realised what it was. And for you, it was due to a school trip, and it was a simulator, actually.
It was, yeah. And I remember it was a simulator, but of a roller coaster.
Correct.
And I didn't know what a simulator was. I didn't know how I felt about going on it. And I remember a teacher saying to me, don't worry, if you get scared, I'll hold on to your pigtails, because I had pigtails in my hair.
That's a weird thing to hold on to.
But she was sat behind me.
Feels a bit Matilda-ish.
But I think that was the thing. I then thought, oh, that doesn't sound nice. So she's going to grab onto the back of my hair and pull my hair if I'm scared. That doesn't, it's not like, oh, I'll give you a hug.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And I remember thinking, oh my God, like I'm going on this thing. I don't know how to feel about it. It sounds like it could be scary because someone explained it to me. And I thought, I don't really know what that's going to be like, you know, kind of general normal nerves. And then hearing that really freaked me out. I was like, I don't want that.
Great example of how out of context anxiety is created due to, realistically, is a misunderstanding.
But it's a child's interpretation.
Exactly.
So as an adult, you'd go, well, that's silly. So you wouldn't bother about it. But as a child, it feels awful. And you just think, I don't want to be in this situation again.
And the biggest, again, one of the biggest antagonists of anxiety is our internal dialogue and these 2 words, what if? You know, what if I speak out and people laugh at me? What if I go on that roller coaster and it falls apart? What if I go up that height and fall off? What if I get in that enclosed space, can't get out? What if that spider jumps at me? What if, you know, this cough is something that's going to be catastrophic? And it's the internal dialogue of what if, and the answer that we give. isn't
Yeah.
it? That,
But we're in control of the answer. So,
Yeah.
you know, again, what if everything was amazing? What if something,
Yeah.
came out of that and it was totally different?
Exciting.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
exciting.
So can I ask you both a question?
Yeah.
I'm going to throw it out there, put you on the spot.
oh,
So I now, and it could just be times have changed, people talk more openly about the mental health, things like that. But it seems like there's a lot more talk of anxiety in young people, and especially when I see at uni, there's a lot of people that are anxious, and a lot of it is out of context. And a lot of them say, I don't know why or whatever. Do you have any idea why that might be? Why it seems like it's more prevalent now?
I feel that social media has a as a
Yeah, I
sort
mean,
of-
looking back on so when we were at school, I don't think I ever heard the word anxiety at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't. But when I say social media could be an antagonist of anxieties, is because we are comparing ourselves to things. We're
Massively.
expecting that people live these unrealistic
Comparison
24/7
does lead
Yeah.
to anxiety.
happy lives.
Oh, we know that.
Pressure.
Yeah, we know that from like science research that basically if we science corner, if we compare ourselves to people that we feel are better than us, that improves our self-esteem. And if we compare, sorry, all the way
Start
around, start again. Set up so strong with my science then, and then just
Yes.
completely dropped it. Right, start again.
Like a bit like a
If
roller
we-
coaster.
Just like that's what I was
Yeah.
evidencing there. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much.
And are you over that now?
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Does that mean if I refer to your roller coaster anxiety, I would refer to you as past tense?
Is that a joke?
Oh, just about
His
smile, I
face
would
makes it
say,
look like it's a
probably,
joke, but I'm not
Is
getting
it a
it.
joke?
Past
Past
tense.
Hunter,
Is it a joke?
I'm not
can
gonna
you
You're
look
not
at
tense.
this one
You're not
either.
tense about it anymore. You are past tense. It's all right.
You can tell that was.
I would
that,
never
you
have
can,
got
you can
that.
tell that wasn't on the spot.
Yeah, he just made it up when he was dead proud as well, which is why he was smiling.
I'm embarrassed.
What?
I am.
But it would have been
Sorry,
tense in the
kids.
past. It doesn't even make.
Right, okay, let's just bring it back.
Right, so,
So-
let's go right back to science.
Science
corner.
corner.
Science corner.
Yeah.
So basically, if we compare ourselves to someone that is better than us, it damages our self-esteem. Whereas if we compare ourselves to someone that we perceive isn't as good as us, it boosts our self-esteem. And that's why as kids often, without meaning, we kind of put people down and go like, oh, I did so much better than Stacey in my exam. Like as kids, like
And could be why other kids put other kids down.
Oh, 100%. And that can obviously affect people's self-esteem that they got put down by someone else. Not, no one was trying to put them down. It's just that they were trying to feel better about themselves.
Correct.
But we do that. We, research shows that we often, like, for example, if we're, we're part of a football team, or we support a football team, should I say, and that football team do well, suddenly we're like, oh, yes, that's my team. We tend to talk about it more because we get kind of a self-esteem boost by
Correct.
seeing ourselves as part of that. And that's what we do. So to have a good view of ourselves, we have to kind of look at people that aren't doing as well as us, not in a bad way, but to kind of go, look how well I'm doing compared to most. Like, that's great. Whereas if we look at people that are doing better than us, suddenly we feel, oh, I'm not doing as well as others, which then makes us feel bad. So in terms of social media, people do not put on social media, oh, I'm having a really bad day, I'm not doing so great at this, I'm struggling with this. And as a result of that, all we see is, oh my goodness, everyone's doing so well.
Yeah.
We're then doing that upwards comparison
Yeah.
and then feeling really bad.
Do you know what just springs to mind then? It's funny, isn't it, that how many people put on their social media, for example, oh, failed my driving test today.
No.
Yeah, no, you
They don't. They go, I've passed
I've
my
never
driving
seen it.
test.
Yeah.
And then the rest of everybody else goes, oh my God, that must mean they passed first time. I don't know why
Yeah.
we assume that. And yet somebody who has to have multiple tests goes, oh, I just can't do this, I'm no good. But we don't actually appreciate how many times other people may have failed their driving test. So I think social media, in answer to your question, Hunter, antagonists in the modern day of anxiety, I do think social media plays a big part in that. I think that we seek perfection as opposed to normality, which is something that we talk about.
And we think that
quite
perfection
often.
is normal, but it's not.
Absolutely,
You know?
it isn't. So I think that's got an element of it. And I think that anxiety has always been a big thing.
Yeah.
But I just don't think that it was deemed socially acceptable to talk about it. When I look back at my childhood and even my mum, my mum had my mum used to have panic attacks. She had an eating disorder and she had claustrophobia. She had all these things, but it was kind of unspoken. It was like, you don't say anything. I remember seeing my mum.
They would just got on with it.
Well, I think what happened was that, no, I actually don't. I think, yes, we did, but we were hurting on the inside. And so what was happening, I remember seeing my mum breathing into a paper bag and thinking like,
Really?
I've only ever seen that in films.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
I've only
she
seen
used to
that in
do that. And I
films.
used to think, what the heck's that all
What film
about?
is it where
Wow.
someone gets handed a paper bag? Is it like
That is such a general question.
Yeah, that could be so many films.
What's that
Yeah.
film where someone gets a glass of water? What's
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
there's a film we watched. Is it like Home Alone or something? Where like
No.
someone gets handed
Oh.
a paper bag because they're like breathing. Like, oh my god,
That
there's
could
like
be any. That could,
no, there's some
so
film we watched
many.
in childhood where like someone they keep handing them a paper bag every time they're like freaking out.
Wasn't
Was it-
anything to do with the Cinderella story, was it?
No.
No,
No, I'm
wasn't.
thinking Home Alone in my
It
head. Am
wasn't
I
Home
right?
No, it
Home
wasn't
Alone.
Home Alone.
Who's going to
I
hand
don't
Kevin
know.
No, not
paper
Kevin,
bag?
the
He's
mom.
alone all the time.
Catherine O'Hara.
Oh,
She's always
no,
like
no,
freaking
no.
out, isn't she?
Oh, yeah, maybe.
No.
But anyway, so
I'm gonna Google this because
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Right.
I'm
Yeah,
feeling
Google,
like
Google.
there's something going on.
You know when
So-
you're trying to think about things, I always think,
I'm googling Home Alone paper
does the
bag.
name Pavlov ring a bell?
I appreciate the psychology joke at least. At
Yeah.
least there's some.
I think it's on
It's
topic.
rooted
I'll
in
bring it in,
something
yeah,
interesting
yeah.
there.
Well,
Yeah.
you're trying to think about something.
Can I tell you,
Yeah.
I've googled Home Alone paper bag and nothing's come up. But
Yeah.
what has come up is the scene in Home Alone with the shopping bags, and I've just remembered that. You know where
Kevin is
Yeah.
walking, shopping, he's got all his laundry in his bags, snap.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And someone's just pointed out here that when he's in the shop that she's packing up paper bags, but he's carrying carrier bags when the bags break.
Never know.
Not
I need to watch
noticed
that back. It's like a forum, so it could be wrong.
No, I'm thinking it's probably
Yeah,
right.
but what's this going to do with blowing in the
No,
in the
but
bag?
I've just found this out. You know, Home Alone fans point out surprise, hidden detail in iconic Christmas film and a glaring mistake.
And it was
It's
that
a glaring gap.
Yeah.
that we
Well,
watched it
Can
a
I just
million
say,
times.
Who cares enough really to like?
Yeah.
Is this really a big shocking?
We're
moment
talking
in
about
people's
panic
lives?
attacks here.
Yeah,
blowing
we
in
are.
the paper
So,
bag.
so moving on. So
How did the bags manage to break precisely at the right time? That's what people want to know.
both together?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I
what
don't
people
know.
want to know.
Anyway, so I suppose
Anyway,
what,
moving on.
what I'm saying in regards to, I would see my mum and she would be
yes,
suffering.
that was when the bags
So
came.
I think that the other difference where it might seem that more people are struggling as well is because, and this isn't a bad thing, it's a really positive thing, that we're talking about it. And there is a lot to be said for a problem shared. Like there is, you know, I think it's quite often when we have anxieties, we have worries, we have these fears, we think, oh my gosh, it's just me. And carrying that burden is actually puts more weight on your shoulders.
100%.
Whereas when we can say, okay, listen, I feel anxious or I feel like this, does it, does it stop it? No, it doesn't. But what it does help us to realize is that this isn't abnormal and that anxiety is actually
Normal.
a normal part of life.
Well, we've never had the conversation about public speaking, and all four of us have just said that
Yeah.
we've all experienced that.
Absolutely.
So had we not discussed that, you know, Hunter could have felt I'm
We
the
wouldn't
only
know.
one that's experiencing that. That makes
Yeah,
me
yeah,
really
yeah.
abnormal, and actually, it's probably really quite common. So,
Yeah.
like you say, normalizing anxiety and realizing
look at
everybody
that.
has it.
We've all had those moments. We've all had anxieties, and can we still be happy? And yes, we can, because when you, for example, Hunter, you had to go and stand up and do that public speaking to 500 students at school. Yes, you were anxious, but when you did it, were you happy?
Yeah, and in the end, it became one of my favorite things to do. Like I really look forward to it, and
Thrill
it became.
seeker.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I
Yeah.
mean, but it didn't even bother me towards the end as
Yeah,
well because
no,
I
understand.
challenged it so much. I think.
What a
But-
transformation.
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely depends on the type of anxiety, but the cause of the anxiety. And
Yeah.
I think that in that context, pushing myself and doing it more and more kind of gave me evidence. that
So
it
how
wasn't
confident
bad.
did you become?
Well, I mean, I started off, and I remember the first one. I felt like I was going to throw up. I was sweating out, nearly passed out. I was a mess. And then in the end, I went on stage in a sparkly suit. Do you remember this? Doing it for charity.
Yeah.
Sparkly suit. I completely embarrassed myself and took the mick out of myself for the comedic effect. I loved it. I just enjoyed it so much.
Amazing. Well done. And
I
what
think
about you?
So do you think that because of how it made you feel in a good way, that counterbalanced and made it, what I'm trying to say here, it just made-
Diluted. It
yeah, but
diluted.
not just diluted, but it made you want to do it more because, or was that because of
Yeah.
the feedback you got from?
I mean,
from the
yeah,
audience?
it was. And I think that whole experience changed my perspective on anxiety a lot. Not necessarily on anxiety as a whole, but just that doing that and then showing that when I challenged it and it became a lot easier, that a lot of times it feels in that moment so overwhelming. And I've never experienced anxiety like I did that first time when I was like, felt like I was going to throw up. And knowing now that it just made me realize a lot of time that it is just my body trying to protect myself. And a lot of times it is irrational. And just sometimes doing the thing that you're anxious about kind of proves to you that it's not as bad as it seems a lot of
But
the time.
I think what was making you feel bad was the what if it goes
yeah.
wrong? What if people laugh at me? What if? And then your answer you got your answer. What you thought was a what if negative, because you practiced it, your what if came back and it went, well, actually, I now know there's no what if involved here. I know that this is going to go really well and that I'm going to really enjoy it.
And I think that comes down to understanding as well. You know, we were saying before about understanding anxiety takes so much of the negative feelings out of it. So whether that be understanding kind of where your anxiety comes from, which is what you were talking about with the timeline, which straight away you can go, right, I understand that, you know, this is just about this situation, and you can really sort of, rather than feel like clouded by it, you can understand where it comes from, but also understanding that, you know, you might be thinking about the worst case scenario and understanding that that might not happen. So, you know, understanding that, you know, it might go better than you expected and that sort of thing. And understanding the normality element. So understanding what I'm feeling right now is, you know, a normal feeling, anxiety. Maybe I'm feeling it in the wrong context, but so does so many other people in the world in different contexts. So just knowing that it doesn't make you feel as abnormal, and having that understanding can take so much of the power out of it. So you can accept.
Do you not think that as well, unmasking that kind of monster that we create and like you say about understanding is and doing a timeline really helps us to start to find those origins, and then what we do with those origins, obviously we're sort of speaking about in different episodes and how we address that. However, it's amazing that how we can uncover, and when we uncover it, just uncovering the origin of an anxiety can let it go. And for me, I remember I would struggle to sleep through the night. I remember that if Nick was ever out and I was home alone, I was really anxious. You know, I had this anxiety of being in my own home alone. And it was always when it was at night, I'd wake up in the night. And it was like, where is this coming from? Now knowing, and this is making me this
Can
was
just
an anxiety.
myth bust something?
Yes.
The myth that anxiety can be genetic or hereditary. It's not true.
Yeah, good.
There's always a reason behind it.
There always is, yeah. Because I know that when
what happened?
So I would say to Nick, you know, I can't sleep well at night. Now, what I actually, when we sort of realised that it is a myth, you know, I wasn't just created this way, that this wasn't genetic or hereditary, or I wasn't born this way. So there was a reason behind it. And on further kind of looking at my timeline and thinking back to childhood, because we know that most of these limiting behaviours are created in childhood because we haven't got the experience actually to see things
from a different perspective.
And in a
We
better,
tend to look at things one-dimensionally.
Yeah, and not in an adult perspective.
So go on, Eva. When was it?
So what that actually was, believe it or not, so it was the TV show Crime Watch. I would watch Crime Watch as a child, and what that created in me was the belief that darkness is dangerous, that people are just breaking into everybody's homes. And so I was on high alert, and that was why I struggled to sleep. Now, once I actually figured it out and went, right, that's why I'm on high alert at night. That's why I don't like being on my own at night, and sort of challenge that childhood belief. It just went.
And you can kind of laugh at it then, can't you?
Yeah.
Like, that was my kid's like as a kid, that was me misunderstanding. I mean, to be fair to you, I'm just going to say what's really embarrassing for me is that at least Crime Watch is real, right? Do you know what I mean? Like, at least, like,
well,
yes,
it was a TV show, let's be honest.
But what I mean is it's real events, right?
Yeah.
It's about real events.
You to the crime in the world.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and obviously it gives you a really, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a misproportionate kind of
it paints
view.
a really very negative light of
Yeah,
because you're only looking at the bad stuff.
Yeah, because they're only isolated events, really, but it makes
Exactly.
them look like
the rarities are looking
common.
common,
Yeah.
more common than they are. But at least that's real. I had the same thing because of Coronation Street. Like, Coronation Street wasn't even real. You're talking about real crimes. I did not sleep for days after watching Richard Hillman on Coronation Street. Like, I used to watch that with Nan, and I was terrified. I thought Richard Hillman was going to come break into the house. I was sleepless nights over that man. And the irony of it is,
Did he
talking
kill
about
Maxine?
Yeah.
Exactly. And then
It's
he
not
drove
bonus,
Gail
Maxine.
into the canal.
Did he not whack Emily over the head as well?
Yeah,
with something. I think so. But anyway.
Honestly, I was traumatized, like truly traumatized as a child by Richard Hillman. And, you know, the irony is now talking about facing your fears, you know, Hunter saying that he, you know, faced his fears with public speaking. I actually now know Brian, who played Richard Hillman.
Yeah, he's a good
Brian
friend of
Capron,
ours now,
which is
isn't he?
hilarious because Brian, came into my life in a completely other way through work, and we're now really good friends. And it still makes me laugh that, understanding that where my fear came from was a character that Brian played. I mean, best of all, I now know Brian, so I can say that he's a nice guy, and I don't have to worry about, any Richard Hillman breaking into my house at night because, Brian's
Shows
actually
what a good
lovely.
actor he is.
So
Have you ever told him that he was your biggest fear?
I have actually, yeah. I have divulged that to him, and he just finds it hilarious. I mean, Brian's a great character, isn't he? He's so much fun.
I adore him.
And I love listening to Brian because I feel like he has so much wisdom to share. I feel like he's
been around the block.
He has,
not that in a good way.
In a good way.
In a good way.
He's worked in TV for a very long time. I mean, people know him from Grange Hill before, obviously Coronation Street as
yes,
well.
Yes. He's been in loads of stuff.
Someone at Bergerac.
Yeah.
Oh, me and Hunter were starstruck.
Yeah.
He'd been in Midsummer Murders. We used to watch that. In Midsummer Murders, he was in 2 episodes of that.
Yeah.
I know. So
The Bell.
Something with murder though, doesn't it?
Yes.
He's got a bit of a murdery theme.
Next time I speak to him, I feel like I need to ask him about that because he
call him.
is. I mean, I can try ringing him. I feel like he.
See if he's around. If he doesn't answer, never mind. But it would be an interesting.
Is there some reason why I always plays a murderer?
Yeah, it's true, isn't it? Typecast. Let's see if he answers. He might not be answering. Doesn't want to speak to me.
Welcome to the O2.
Did you put the phone down there?
No, it went to answer
I
machine.
feel like you put, no.
You never know. He might ring you back. So just keep your phone handy. Yeah.
I'll text him. If he calls me before the end of the app, then we'll speak to him.
Yeah. Good idea.
If he doesn't, then fine.
Yeah.
Doesn't want
But
to talk to me.
But
Oh, hang on.
Maybe he's out murdering somebody.
He just rang me and I put the phone down. Oh, hang on. Get my own back. Hello, Brian. Hi, it's
Hi.
Liv. You all right?
Yes, I'm good, thank you.
We are just recording our podcast. It's all four of us, myself, Nick, Eva and Hunter. We're just recording our podcast and we're just talking about you actually because we've just been talking about anxiety, and I was explaining how what I told you before about the fact that I used to get really bad anxiety and sleepless nights after watching Richard Hillman as a kid. And the stress that you caused me. But I was saying, we were talking about facing your fears, and I was saying that when I met you, you weren't actually that scary. And now we're friends. So I just wanted to, we were talking about, and we were just also saying that you're very wise. So we've got 2 questions for you, if that's all right, if you don't mind being on our podcast.
Yeah, no, not at all.
So the first question is, why have you played so many murdering roles? Like, why was it Richard Hillman, Midsummer Murders? Like, what's that about?
very murderous.
Why are you so murdery?
Well, early in my career, I played nice people.
Oh, okay. So it just went downhill
Oh,
from
we didn't
there.
know that.
Yeah, it was just actually the first nasty one was Richard Hillman, and it quite surprised me. But I think they wanted to show a very kind of cheery, charming kind of guy who had another side to him. So I could do the cheery, charming bit maybe, and then I had to find the nasty bit.
Yeah, fair. I mean, you did a good job of it because I obviously believe. I mean, I was only 6 or so at the time, but I did believe it. So you did a good job.
I'm glad I frightened you.
And the other question we had for you is because we were just saying that you're very wise and you've been. Well, I'll just tell you, Eva said that you've been around the block. I don't know what she meant by that. That's what she said. But yeah, we were just saying, obviously, you've been in TV for a long time and you are very wise. Would you have any advice? Have you ever experienced any anxiety? And would you have any advice for our listeners in terms of anxiety or confidence and sort of feeling better around that?
Well, I don't think there's much more. I mean, if you're a performer, then unless you're mad, you have anxiety, particularly before a first night or on any recording situation. It's an awful lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Particularly when I was in Coronation Street, because it went to 5 nights a week. So you can imagine learning, and you don't get any rehearsal really. You're very uptight and nervous, before each take. And then you've got to learn to relax. And the way you do that is, I always imagine the camera as my friend, and it's a warm, if you like, a warm fire or something like that. So I try and imagine that it's a warm thing rather than this big light going off. Oh my God, millions of people are watching this.
That's such
so
a good, that's a really good advice. I think that's one thing that Eva was saying is about people's kind of what ifs and the idea that we kind of create these feelings because we're always thinking what if it goes wrong or what if it's bad, whereas I suppose you're changing
thoughts.
that. Yeah, absolutely.
And you just have to, that happens just before you walk on stage often because you suddenly can't think of a line. And what you learn to do is wipe your mind of all that, walk on and trust. And in a sense, it's a little bit like that thing where people walk off a cliff, when there should be a bridge there and you trust there will be a bridge there, that kind of thing. You're not going to fall off the cliff. There's going to be a bridge and you walk across it. You just have to throw yourself in. Also, I think physically, breathing is very, very important.
Yes.
And something, if someone's generally an anxious person, yoga is a terrific thing. I don't do it myself, but my wife does it. And that teaches you all about breathing. So breathing is very important.
So
I think if you're in a panicky situation, then just breathe very slowly. Through your nose, very slowly and out through your mouth. And that'd help. And then I think in any anxiety-making situation, that it will change within maybe 20 minutes to half an hour. Or whatever,
That's so true. Yeah, that is a really, really good point as well, because you can't. It doesn't last forever. Anxiety
exactly.
response. So no, you're absolutely.
And that's a cliche. It's like love yourself and try and think of positive things.
Think nice thoughts.
Your life.
No, you're absolutely spot on. Well, thank you for that, Brian. Really appreciate it, and it's nice to hear your voice as well.
Oh, lovely. Oh, well, great. I hope your podcast goes well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Soon. Thanks,
Bye.
Brian.
Bye.
Thank
Loads
you.
of love.
Bye. Lots of love.
Bye.
Oh, bless him.
Oh, I love Brian.
He's so sweet, isn't
Who'd
he?
have thought he was portrayed?
Good
as-
tips there.
Yeah. No, some really good tips there. And one
It's
thing...
interesting because we were saying, if you imagine how many going back to when he was on Coronation Street,
Yeah.
literally millions of people watching. That is because if you think about it, as he alluded to, the pressure of leads to the anxiety. So the more you've got, the more pressure that you put on yourself, the more anxious you're going to feel. And thinking that there's millions watching, that's going to make you feel anxious. But as he reframed it and said it was like
a nice one fire. It's so true though, isn't it? Because it's just all about our perception. So if you're expecting a bad outcome or something scary or negative, you're going to feel anxious.
But that's usually the case, isn't it?
Which is what you're saying about the what ifs. If you think what if something positive, it takes a lot of that feeling away.
100%.
And I think one thing that he said there that was really great was about it doesn't last. Like even if it feels awful, just knowing it doesn't last. And I think that's such a good point.
I so agree.
That I hadn't even thought of, but it's absolutely spot on because our anxiety response, physically speaking and biologically speaking, our anxiety response can only last for so long. And there's these really old horrible techniques of flooding, which is the old way of dealing with phobias, which isn't very ethical, which was where you would literally just put people in a room with their worst fear.
Correct.
So if you had a phobia of spiders, you'd stick someone in a room full of spiders and just leave them in there. And the reason why that works is because you can't stay anxious forever. Eventually the anxiety responce will go.
Is that not because you're proving to yourself though that you're safe in that environment?
It's a combination.
Nothing's happening.
It's a combination because but your adrenaline can physically only last so long. So your adrenaline starts to drop because it can
and
feel
nothing
awful,
went wrong.
but it has to go down, and then your adrenaline starts to calm down, your anxiety response starts to calm down, and you're still in that room and nothing's happened. And like you said, then you get the evidence of I'm actually all right. And I think that's the thing, that if people are listening and are struggling with anxiety, to know that, as you said before, it can feel awful, and it really, really can. The physical symptoms can be horrific, but knowing that this isn't going to last, as well, and that it will pass.
I'm just going to jump on the back of that as well and say something that you talk about in the workshops, actually, that I think has helped me in the past. And just in that same way, asking yourself, like, am I safe? Because ultimately the anxiety is a response to protect yourself. Your body's going, you're trying to get yourself out of that situation. You're releasing adrenaline.
So if asking you that question again now for our metaphorical handbook to happiness. So we'll start with you guys, and we'll start with you, Hunter. So in our metaphorical handbook to happiness, where we're saying that, do you know what, you can have anxiety and still be happy. What are you adding to our page for that? Just
that when you're having that anxiety response, to whether it's in context or not in context, just asking yourself, am I safe? Because just that whole response is to get yourself ready to run, to survive. But then if you can counteract that with, am I safe? Do I actually need this physical response? Do I need to protect myself from anything? And like you were saying with the Crime Watch, Like, even though dad wasn't there to protect you, and that was why that whole thing came from. Just being like, well, my house, we call the police, like there's other people around, like, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not
Rationalise it.
Exactly, rationalise it and just ask yourself that question.
And also, there's no need for protection.
Well,
why do I need to be protected in that?
Yeah,
moment?
exactly. There's no threat, and that's basically.
I think that's a really good point, because when you talk about anxiety in context, the reason why, you said we had that response for a reason, and the reason why is if you were in a life-threatening, dangerous situation, having that adrenaline allows you, fight or flight response to run away from the danger,
Correct.
fight the danger, whatever it is. And we hear about these stories of people that are in horrific situations, and they suddenly get this strength. They can lift up cars, they can do things that they never thought possible, and it's because of that fight or flight response being there for a reason.
So what's your addition to the handbook to happiness?
So I think that two things, if I'm allowed to.
You are.
My first one, which we haven't really mentioned, is if you are struggling with anxiety, to allow you to be happy is not to allow it to consume who you are. So, you can struggle with anxiety, but that's not your whole personality. That's not who you are. It doesn't define you. And to accept that, we all deal with anxieties, and we all will experience anxiety throughout our lives because it's there for a reason. Sometimes, yes, we attach it to the wrong thing, but just to have that understanding and sort of take on board that it's nothing wrong with you. It's just something that you're experiencing, but it's not who you are. Because when you understand that it's not your whole personality and there's so many other things about you other than that can allow you to be happy, because there's so much more to you and you as a person. So I'd say that as one thing.
That's a really good point. And there's so many people on social media that have the handle anxiety warrior.
Yeah, and
anxiety
I think they do that
battler.
because they see that as kind of like it's
Their
like a
identity.
strengthening thing, though.
Yeah.
They're trying to take on I can fight this, but by doing that, they're making it so much bigger.
Well, they're making it their identity, aren't
I
they?
think the fighting it isn't it makes it more of a focus as well, and just
Makes it-
sometimes the acceptance of the anxiety and recognizing that you're anxious, and also realizing, as we've said, there's always a cause, and realizing that there's a place for it, because you're always trying to protect yourself. It's not something to always fight. It's uncomfortable,
Yeah.
but it's not. It can be really, really awful, but equally fighting it can just make that so much worse, I think.
And my second thing is just to know that, no matter what you're feeling, this shall pass. I don't know what it's a saying. Is it from some film or something where they say this shall
Gandalf.
pass? That's what I was thinking of.
That-
You shall
Oh no,
not
that's
pass.
you shall not pass.
Yeah.
Right,
Oh,
forget
right,
that.
okay.
That's the
No.
opposite of this.
It's the opposite,
So
yeah.
ignore
We want to
Gandalf.
pass.
Yeah. Ignore Gandalf's. You shall not pass. That's the opposite of this.
That's such a me thing to do.
And what we're saying is, what's a new thing to do?
What you just said then.
Getting it mixed
Getting
up,
the wrong thing.
Yeah, well, we're ignoring Gandalf, so we're doing it the other way around. And what we're saying is, this shall pass, no matter what you're experiencing, no matter how bad it feels. Because even that in the moment, like Con said, if you're feeling anxious, asking yourself, am I safe? Do I need this? So you can calm that fight or flight response. But also saying to yourself, this shall pass, even no matter how bad it feels.
Absolutely.
And know it's going
like
to
it
pass.
has done before.
Like it always has before. I will get through this. I've got through it in the past. And reminding yourself of that can take the heat out of it.
I think as well as probably as people out there that are going to say like they're generally anxious, and that anxiety doesn't really ever go away, because it's not necessarily one event like where you're being challenged public speaking or something. But I think also just knowing that it will pass, even because there's tools and there's things that you can do, especially to get over that. So like we've said about identifying the cause and then dealing with the cause, as you dealt with the Crime Watch and things like that, which I'm sure we'll cover in future episodes as well. But just having faith as well that there's things you can do, and you can get over it, and even then it will pass as well.
So your words of wisdom to add, Nick Speakman.
My words of wisdom
to add to our handbook to
firstly,
happiness.
if you have a choice, if you have a choice of anything, you would want to be. If you're talking about animals, I always bring animals into it. If you wanted to be, choose an animal to be, you would want to be a horse, because horses are always brought up in a stable environment. And as a result,
that's his addition. We've all given advice.
People
as a
are
result,
reading
they
our
don't
handbook.
struggle with anxiety. No, my advice is that don't fight anxiety, accept it, embrace it, and thank it, because ultimately anxiety is your personal protection mechanism, and you only feel anxious because of something that you thought was a danger in the past. So ask yourself, am I safe? Am I in danger? And if I'm not, when could I have set this up? What was I protecting myself from in the past? And is it still relevant in my life? Because most of those things aren't. When you're protecting yourself from personal speaking, how often do you do that anyway?
And just to add a caveat to that, you said thank you, and I think it's thank you, but I don't need this right now. So thanking it
Yeah,
for
thanks for
trying to
protecting
protect
me,
him, you've
but I'm
acknowledging
safe.
you're not in a situation you need protecting right now. And I think Brian's tip, actually, I'll just throw it in as he's not here. Brian's tip to breathe is really good, because when we're in a fight or flight situation, our breathing does speed up. We start to hyperventilate to take oxygen in to run or fight.
Yes, we do.
And so slowing that down can also start to calm that fight off.
And on that note,
and also talking about things and realizing it's not just you, because so many people
Normalising.
suffer with
it's
anxiety.
all right that I was going to say that as my
Yeah.
tip. It's
Was
all
it?
right
Well, I
that I
didn't-
was going to mention
I
Brian.
didn't know
but
what you
that's
were going to
okay.
say.
I'll just sit here
and
quietly.
you are not alone.
Well, you have to think
Which
of
makes me
something
think
else now,
about,
quick. Get thinking.
why did the mortgage have anxiety? Because it realised it was alone.
Oh dear.
Do you
Right.
know,
Can I literally bring this
I
podcast
was
to an end
gonna
before
say
he tried to
yes.
shoehorn
I was
another
just saying
show?
some fun biological thing if you're interested in it.
Oh,
it's
go on
not,
then.
It's not even that exciting. I'm just saying, you're saying slow your breathing down and stuff. That's how the bag thing works. You see your breathing into the
bag,
breathing
yeah.
into
The
the
bag.
bag.
Yeah.
It's because
What
you
do you
take
remember
it.
that film?
I don't remember the film. It's still not coming to me. 30 minutes down the line, it's still not coming to me, surprisingly.
Do you know what I think it
Um,
was? Something to do. I know what it was. It's just come back to me. This is going to be so irrelevant to so many people. You're probably one of the only people. Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. Mr. Mosby always used to pass the mumma paper
Don't
bag.
remember that at all.
That's
No.
what
So
it was.
very-
No one
That's me.
knows.
It
Only
wasn't
you.
Home
But
Alone.
basically, because
it was Mr. Mosby.
because you breathe in the oxygen, like your air again, it's
Yeah.
lowering oxygen, so you force
Exactly.
yourself to breathe
Got you.
slower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's how
So
that thing
now
works.
my words of wisdom,
Yes.
folks. This is now
Here we go.
the Eva's moment
Here we go.
Your
of
time
wisdom.
to shine.
My time to shine.
We need a
Okay.
spotlight on
You
you
better,
right
you
So-
better shine now with all this
So-
going on.
Metaphorical spotlight.
Speakman silence. And I would like to just say, in regards to anxiety, and my little tip of anxiety and happiness is don't beat yourself up over being normal, because actually anxiety is a normal thing that we all suffer with. Write yourself a timeline, particularly childhood, because that's where you can start to find the origins of your anxiety. And before we go on for another 5 hours, I'm going to say thank you so much. We want every one of you to just have a lifetime of happiness, and every morning just think about the things that you're grateful for, because that'll start you in good stead for your day. So thank you so much to listeners. I think we've been all
Thank
over the
you.
place.
And if you do experience anxiety, you can still be happy.
You can.
Yes, you can.
Thanks so much for joining us. Wherever you're listening to this podcast today, do be sure to like, follow, subscribe, and we'd be incredibly grateful of a 5-star review.
Oh, and don't forget to recommend our podcast to your family and friends.
And if you'd like to have a look at some more free resources, take a look at our website, nickandeva.com.
If you want to drop us a question, we'd love to hear from you. Send it to admin@speakman.tv.
And you can follow us. We're at The Speakmans on all social media platforms. On YouTube, we're Handbook to Happiness Pod. If you are struggling, do be sure to speak to your general practitioner. And all that's left to say is that we appreciate you spending time with us today.